This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
Detroit is the greatest!
Straight up light you on fire for a Coney dog right now.
Darren McCarty comes back with Neiman in front of him. McCarty draws. McCarty in. McCarty scores! A magnificent goal! Darren McCarty!
Stafford takes, throws, end zone, Calvin, touchdown, Detroit Lions!
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Motor City Sports Rant. I am Jason Jarvi. Follow me on Twitter at Jarvi the King, and sitting across from me, as always, because nobody else wants to come in and talk with me for an hour and a half. The phone, the doc, John Macaroon. How's it going?
What up, Jason? It's a great day. Love talking sports. It's a fun hour of the week. You know, it's a good chance to talk about Detroit sports, talk about what's going on in our lives. It's just fun to do podcasts, and I'm just fascinated with the whole idea of podcasting, kind of on-demand audio, getting in here and just talking about Detroit sports. I love the fact that we just, kind of chat beforehand and just say, hey, what time are you going to do it? Fire up the mics, and we're live, baby. I just love talking about Detroit sports, and especially on Mondays, talking about the weekend that was with the Tigers, and I'm definitely looking forward to what we're going to talk about on this very episode, number 70.
I do want to talk a little bit, though, about the weekend, because my weekend was pretty much in the dumps. My wife was sick from like Thursday until Saturday, and then I caught her bug. What's the worst kind of sickness? Because, dude, anything to do with the stomach is just awful.
100%. I can attest to what your wife was saying, because stomach bugs are the worst. I had the stomach flu one time in my life, and it was on my birthday. And my wife was so kind and gracious. She reached out to a lot of my family and friends, and all we were going to do is just have people over. And the night before my birthday, I know what got me sick. I had a tuna sandwich from Subway. The morning of...
This is bad news.
Yeah, bad news. The morning of, I just kind of started feeling dizzy, and the room was spinning. And they took me out to breakfast, my sister and my wife, and all of a sudden I'm like, I don't feel good. And I went to the restroom and just threw up everywhere. And, it was horrible. And it was one of those feelings where everything I ate would not stay down. And my stomach was upset. My head was spinning. I'm like, you know what? We got to cancel this. I stayed in my room, was watching TV. It was just the worst feeling. And it lasted for about 24 hours where I was just praying to the porcelain god and like, please end this. And really, since then, not had a tuna sandwich since anywhere.
It's so strange, too, how it literally lasts for like 12 to 24 hours, and then you immediately feel fine afterwards. Like me, I started probably about midnight on Saturday, so like really early Sunday morning, started feeling it, went into work early, and then the rest of that day I was just out of commission. We're recording this podcast on Monday, probably around like 9 a.m. That's when I finally started not feeling kind of queasy. And, I was able to stomach something down. But it's just the worst.
Who's the guilty party? What'd you guys eat? Where do you suspect it's from?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure if it's, just kind of it carried from my wife to me, because I didn't really eat a ton. The only culprit, I don't want to blame it on it, but it's a Qdoba burrito, because I love Qdoba so much. But it's a possibility that the burrito may have been my downfall.
What the hell is that about?
I know. I love my burritos as much as everybody, maybe even more. But yeah, it's the worst, and there's other stuff too, sinus, anything when you're congested or if you're just hacking up stuff, that's bad too. Headaches, it really, whenever you have it, it's just the worst.
Yeah, no, I've been lucky in that people ask me, John, you've been working, you're doing the podcast, you have a practice, you do other things outside of the practice and the podcast. How do you do it all? And all I say is, ever since I was 17, I was a cashier at Rite Aid. I would take a one-a-day men's health vitamin, and relatively speaking, I've been okay. Friends of mine have kind of come to me and said, listen, when they start feeling sick, they take extra zinc, and it kind of helps them to get over sickness better. But lucky for me, being around a lot of kids, I haven't been that sick. Maybe a little bit of runny nose, but thank gosh for me, I've been, relatively speaking, I would say I've never really taken a sick day in the better part of like 5 years.
Well, are your kids your kids aren't in school yet, are they?
No, that my youngest is going to start preschool in the fall, so I know that's where it's going to start.
Get ready for it, because your kid is going to be coming home with everything. Now, we do have to talk about some other bad stuff that happened over the weekend, namely the Tigers.
Not over the weekend, mainly Sunday. That was unbelievable how you could go from potentially sweeping a bad Chicago White Sox team. They're arguably in turmoil with their best guy cutting up jerseys, acting a fool, acting potentially mentally ill, and you could have swept them. And Sunday, you come out and you don't get the run. You make key mistakes, errors. Jose Iglesias with an uncharacteristic error in the ninth inning. That was terrible. And then you go on, you lose that game, and then again, you come back from 4-1 down. You make it a game in the ninth inning, and then what do? You bring up Bruce Rondon. He walks the first guy. 2 walk-off losses.
Fail.
It was devastating. It was awful. And I tweeted out, thank you for a terrible day of baseball. Sunday was probably a really deflating day, and I thought of you. I was like, of course, Jason's going to be like, here we go again. Again, a week later, another week, and we're looking at a team that's, relatively speaking, around 500.
500. We're in the same position.
But we got a lot to sink into because our esteemed general manager addressed the media, and he came out and he had a lot to say and a lot of things that he said.
A lot of hot air.
Yeah, well, the one thing, though, that he said that was really, really tough, kind of got to me, was he said that, listen, this is the team, we got $200 million payroll. This is the team that we think can compete and win. And I said, oh boy, it's one of those things where I think they're handcuffed by where they're at as an organization. They don't have enough to give up in order to improve the team, because if you give up players, you're going to have to give up guys that are going to help you contribute to win this year. And you don't have enough in terms of prospects that they want to give up to get someone in return. So they don't have enough.
How can you feel hopeful about this team at all?
Exactly.
When he's coming out and said, this is the team we're going to win with. And obviously we are dealing with a Miguel Cabrera slump. We don't have JD Martinez. Jordan Zimmerman's hurt. Daniel Norris is on a rehab. I'm not sure what's the high point for this team.
Well, Jarvi, let's start at square one, because a lot of people have said, listen, don't take what the general manager says at face value. Dave Dombrowski used to lie to the media all the time, and he would say, no, we're done, basically, and then he'd add a big-name free agent. But that was in the offseason. They've made a lot of moves to add in the recent past. But do you, at step one, believe what Al Avila said, that, relatively speaking, we're going to stand pat? Do you believe him?
I kind of do, because that's just how I feel this team is right now. If you ask me what they are probably going to do, they probably are going to stand pat, because there's not much they can do. Brad Ausmus's hands are tied, and he's going to be out at the end of the season. If he's not out at the end of the season, then they really need to consider, booting Al Avila after one season. But if you're asking me what they should do, they really should take the approach that they had last year, where they started selling off their big pieces. Now, the only bad thing about that is that you don't have the expiring contracts that you had last year. Last year, you had Cespedes and Price, who did they both have expiring contracts?
Cespedes did.
And I think Price did as well.
Price did too, because he got a nice big fat deal.
Right. So you don't really have that with any of your players. So you're either going to have to sell off like your big name players, like an Ian Kinsler, who's really doing good for you, or if you want to talk about the unspeakable in trading Miguel Cabrera or Victor Martinez, you're going to have to eat a ton of that contract.
Exactly. And so that's why when he comes out and says, we're going to stand pat, then you have to really say, okay, are the additions, the returning guys from injury, Jordan Zimmerman, Daniel Norris, JD Martinez, is that going to be enough to turn this team around? Well, if you look at it factually, with those guys, they were still around a 500 team.
I'm not even confident that Jordan Zimmerman's going to come back this season.
You don't think he's going to be effective when he comes back? I think he's starting. He had a relief start.
I know he's supposed to have a rehab. When he comes back, then I mean, if he comes back, he should be 100% healthy. If they should let him get to where he needs to be, they shouldn't rush him back at all. There's really no point at this point. You're 6 games back from the Central. I know you're only 4 games back from a wild card, and if you can get in, anything can happen. But still, this is a guy who you brought in this year to be either your number 1 or number 2. And I'd rather have him healthy going in the next season and work around having a reinvigorated Justin Verlander, Michael Fulmer, coming off of a great rookie season, and then you add a healthy Jordan Zimmerman, and maybe Daniel Norris is able to fix his problems, and then you have a really good top of the rotation. Maybe you have to add one more starting pitcher there.
See, I think what is so tough for the organization is right now your overhead is $200 million. They look at it and go, listen, we're not going to try to flush $200 million down the toilet. So we're going to have to say, you know what? This is the team that we built. Let's see how we do the rest of the way.
That's why I think Pelfrey's going to be with the team the rest of the season.
Of course, this is what the tough part is. Knowing that's what the organization is thinking is super tough, because I think a lot of people would not be so upset if they just unloaded all these guys and sold. Listen, I know it's tough to spend other people's money, but the Tigers, if the overall goal as the organization is to get to a World Series, I would have no problem if they were forthright and honest, come out and say, listen, we had an 8 to 10 year window to try to win it with this core. And unfortunately, we tried our best. We got to 2 World Series. It didn't happen. I think that going forward, we're going to start to rebuild around the youth of this team, and we're going to be in a rebuild mode. And boom, here you go. Kinsler, Verlander, Miggy, Vmart, anybody's open, JD. You pick a couple guys that you're going to decide to build around. Maybe it be Nick and JD, Fulmer, Norris, Boyd. Those are the core. And everybody else, you say, listen, our efforts now are to rebuild for the next 3 to 5 years. I would not be mad at that. Do you think the organization feels like
There's
the
no
fans,
way
the fans would stop coming?
No way the organization would ever do that. I just, it's not the way this organization works. I mean,
but isn't that the right thing to do, though?
Yes, it is the right thing to do, because, I mean, we've seen it with another Detroit team in the Detroit Pistons. You know, when Bill Davidson was still there and Joe Dumars was still running the team, they were still trying to figure it out. And it needed a guy like Stan Van Gundy to come in and just completely blow it all up. He wiped it. And I think you look at what he did in his first season when he just flat out cut Josh Smith. The guy was a cancer on the team, and that you swallowed the money, and that was the right thing to do.
So the question you have to ask is, why aren't the Tigers willing to flush it away and start over? Do they really believe? I mean, how can you, like, I don't know. I don't believe that we're seeing things much differently than the organization is. I understand there's a little bit of PR in there, and you're trying to come out and say, hey, we believe these guys, when they come back, we're going to have a competitive team. But you're about 100 games into the season. We all know what you are. This is not a team that's going to get hot.
The reason is because they're still collecting a paycheck. Until those guys get fired, they're going to trot out the same kind of guys. They're still going to trot out Anibal Sanchez. They're still going to trot out Mike Pelfrey. And, we lost another one. Whatever. Well, Fulmer and Verlander will get it win here and there, and we'll be right back at 500.
See, I feel like fans, broadcasters, the media have more urgency and a little bit more panic than the organization. And I understand the organization can't be panicky and they can't respond to things so fast, but I really believe that this team, if you look at it top to bottom, is not a World Series caliber team. I would say cut your losses now, and potentially within 3 to 4 years, look at the Yankees. They brought aboard Chapman and Andrew Miller, and they're gone. Aroldis Chapman's gone, and arguably the Yankees got back some pieces now for the future. They've realized, okay, this is not it. I think the Tigers need to just cut their losses and say, you know what, we're not winning the World Series. I do believe the fans, if they really believe that they get back young talent, look what you got. You got to just go out and say, listen, we let go of David Price last year. It was very disappointing, but look what we got back. We got a guy that, if all goes to form, Michael Fulmer is going to be an ace. And so you start with that and you go, listen, we have the chance to go out and get talent. And I really believe guys like K-Rod, guys like Verlander, Miguel Cabrera, Vmart, they could get you 2 to 3 players, prospects each. I would say it's time to sell.
I'm not sure about Vmart, but I do agree. I think Kinsler and K-Rod are probably your 2 biggest assets right now. I honestly don't think you can get much for Vmart or Cabrera, because I think Cabrera's contract is way too big. I think Vmart he's too injury prone.
That's where the organization is handcuffed, and then you got to say to yourself, okay, they stand pat. They don't make too many moves, or they make minor moves. Because, we all can say, hey, they need a starter, they need a bullpen arm, but so does every other team in the league.
What are you going to get for Kinsler? I don't think you can get the same haul that you got for Price or Cespedes. I mean, you might be able to. I think probably K-Rod is the person you can get the most for, because he is a legitimate closer, a guy who can come in and finish the 9th for you.
See, then the problem is then you go, okay, let's say you stand pat. You have a manager that just makes mistakes in key moments and is flighty. Like, I'm not exactly sure what his philosophy is, because one day he goes with, hey, I'm going to go by the numbers. And then the next day, when he gets burned by that, he goes, oh, no, never mind. I'm just going to go by feel. And you go, okay, what is Brett Ausmus doing? It doesn't seem like a lot of his decisions turn out in the best, in the best light. And that brings me to my next point, in that Al Avila comes out and is like, what? Why are you guys talking about Brett Ausmus being a lame duck manager? He's got a contract and we'll probably reevaluate it at the end of the year. And I go, you know what? I sit back and I look, and if I'm Al Avila, trade deadline comes or the All-Star break came, I want him to be aggressive, assertive. I think they're too passive, and they're just going with we're going to wait and see. Hell, Al Avila could have blown out Brad Ausmus, just seeing if another guy could have, maybe a different voice could have moved these guys, because we're looking at 3 years of Brad Ausmus, and you know how many playoff victories that he has at this point in time as we're recording this?
A big zero?
A big fat zero. Nothing. So,
and that's the biggest issue, is that they really do believe that this team could get them into the playoffs. And
why?
I will concede the point that if everybody was healthy and in this division that we're in, it's a possibility. And I've even played this card. I've been the slappy Tiger fan, and in predicting, Verlander and Sanchez and Zimmerman to have these crazy win totals that they're no way going to reach. And if they were at their top potential, that's where they could be. They could be at the top of the Central, or really competing for the AL Central. Now, I don't even want to say that they're going to make the wild card, but they are in a position right now where they can at least make up some ground. They're going up against Boston, going up against Houston, and those are two teams that are directly in front of you.
What's disappointing is that Baltimore did you a favor over the weekend. They destroyed Cleveland, and you had a chance on Sunday to get at least a victory of the two, and you just didn't do enough. It
doesn't matter. We can't even beat Cleveland.
Yeah, well, that's what's the toughest part about this is it's like you come up with a solution, they try it, and it blows up in your face. So you're looking at a situation where the Detroit Tigers are on the road to a bunch of dead ends. That's just what it is. Every avenue of a solution that we can come up with, dead end. That's what the Tigers are. At this very point in time, they're a dead end team with really, I believe, not a lot of hope of success for the remainder of 2016.
Are you off the train, John?
Am I off the train?
Are you on my train? Are you on the 500 train?
I'm still watching. I'm not like others that have said they don't watch baseball anymore. I watch.
Oh, you can watch all you want, but it sounds like you're on the 500 train.
I'm on the 500 train.
Yes, I dragged you down.
They're going to be 500, Jason. That's just the way it is. I mean, what do you see happening, going forward? The schedule's going to be a little bit tougher. The pitching isn't there consistently enough. I mean, you can't, basically, we go, well, every time the bullpen doesn't do its job, we go, well, why don't you put in Alex Wilson? Why don't you put in Justin Wilson? Why don't you put in Green? They can't pitch every day. They cannot basically plug all the holes that they have, and it's not going to be enough to correct it at the trade deadline. So it's just kind of one of those things where we're eventually waiting for the season to end, and by all accounts, it's going to end in a big, fat, disappointing nothing. And I'm hoping that if it does, that they don't retain Brett Ausmus. Maybe they won't use the word fire. They just might not, pick up his option. But do you see, if this team doesn't make the postseason, Brad Ausmus being brought back? Because everyone's whispering that the organization really likes him, that he runs the clubhouse pretty well. He's even-keeled. The players basically aren't revolting against him, that he's got the respect of the locker room. Al Avila seems to have that respect for him. Do you see that if this season pans out the way we're looking at it, Brad Ausmus is back in 2017?
Dude, I think anything is possible with Brad Ausmus, and it's horrible. That's last season I defended Brad Ausmus. I think you give him another year, and for all intents and purposes, you bring in Justin Upton, you bring in Jordan Zimmerman, and I thought we had. And I don't think anybody really expected Anibal Sanchez to be as bad as he was this season, because he's just a gas can. So I wanted to give him at least the benefit of the doubt, give him one more season. But if Brad Ausmus is back next season and we don't make the playoffs this year, I'll stop watching the team. I can't be behind that. And I know I'm the complete opposite way for the Lions, because I will follow the Lions whenever. I think that's just because football is king. And I think it's also because it's 16 games. I mean, baseball it's like hitting yourself in the face with a hammer for, 4 months, where football is you have, 16 games where that's all you have to focus on.
But don't you think, though, in the recent past, that the Detroit Tigers have given you a little bit more positive memories than the Detroit Lions? I mean, I know this is a big, epic disappointment, but you got to remember, let's keep this in perspective. We got to 2 World Series. They had a lot of key moments, a lot of walk-offs, a lot of happy memories. I mean, the Magglio Ordonez home run will be forever etched in the fans' minds because it was a team that came out of nowhere. It was something where we were going through a decade almost of horrid baseball, managers that didn't know what they were doing, 100 lost seasons plus, no hope. All of a sudden, we got this young group of kids that are doing some things mixed with some veterans, and 2006 happened, and then it kicked off some spending, moving up the echelon of major league spending and kind of having more hope. You get to the World Series again, but only winning 1 game out of both trips was really disappointing. But I'll take it as a whole. I'll take that over what I see with the Detroit Lions, because with the Detroit Lions, you're basically starting from scratch. And I think that being a fan of the Lions is really, really tough because there's a lot of hope with not a lot of return. And you're a patient guy. I'm a patient guy. But with the Lions, I watch because I love football. But I feel like going into every year, you don't have hope of really success. I mean, really, the ceiling for the 2016 Lions is basically get to the postseason and maybe eke out a win. That's like at the height. Everything else would be like shocking to the majority of fans. So that's with the Tigers. I mean,
expect every year the Lions win the Super Bowl. That should be your goal every year.
You expect them and have that as a goal?
That's the goal every year. And really, that should be every team's goal every single year, to go out and win a championship. Now, obviously, there's teams like the 76ers who their goal is to tank and get the first pick overall. But I think, as we've seen in football, outside of the Lions, there's parity in the league. I think basketball, there really isn't a whole lot of parity there. I know there's like a stat where there's like 10 teams who have won. I'm sure that's wrong, but there's like only 10 teams who have won the championship since like the 80s. I think it's easier to root for the Lions. It really is, because as I said, and I won't disagree with you, that there have been more happy memories with the Tigers so far, or just in looking like the last 10 years from that 2006 season to now in 2016, that, yeah, they got us to the 2 World Series. They had the string of Central Division championships. All in all, it ended in disappointment. We got swept by Baltimore, didn't we? And we lost both of the World Series. We didn't even really show up in either of those World Series. And I think with the Lions, I think it's a lot easier you have 16 games and have really high hope for that. Where with the Tigers, we're 100 games into this and we're still just kicking ourselves in the nuts.
See, before we started this podcast, we were going back and forth a little bit talking about whether it's harder to be a Tigers fan or it's harder to root for a Detroit Lion fan. So I want to ask you, am I being a bad uncle? Because I got a 6-year-old nephew. He loves sports. He dabs into everything. He likes to kick around a soccer ball, likes to shoot hoops, but he's become obsessed with baseball. And if a baseball game's on, he watches it. He checks into the stats. He likes the players' numbers. He's got a really unusual fascination with their birthdays. But going to a game, he's gone out to Utica and the USBPL quite a bit. He's gone to Comerica. He's gone to a couple signings. He loves him some baseball. I want to ask you, am I a bad uncle? Because he already knows and gets a sense because of the way when we talk about the Lions, we all kind of frown. We got that sourpuss face. But beforehand, I kind of coached him up a little bit, and I sent you this today, so you got to answer me this.
So who is this again? This is your nephew?
This is my nephew, Anthony Jr., and he's just a cute kid, and he loves him sports, but he really loves baseball. And this is what I sent you today. It was hilarious.
Jarvi, you don't like the Tigers. You like the Lions, but they stink.
Yeah, I really...
6, he already knows. The Lions stink. I didn't even tell him to do that noise, but...
The raspberry. You can't really blame them. I have seen that with kids where they do mimic. And as you said, you coached him up. My nephew, he gets it from me and my brother of when we talk about it, and he'll be like, "Man, Stafford, he stinks." I'm like, "Yeah, he does." And he's not wrong. The Lions have stunk. They've been disappointing in the past couple of years. But I will say I think football, it's easier to hope because it just you get a fresh start every year.
It's easier to hope, Jason. One playoff victory. They're one of the teams that's never been to the Super Bowl.
I know. But it's also, I want to hope more. If you're asking me who I want to hope more for, it would be the Lions. Because the Tigers have had their victories. It's been a while since they've had a championship, in 84, but the Lions have never been there. So if you're asking me who I want to root more for, it's the Lions. I want them to win. If you asked me, would I give all the Tigers success, even dating back to their last championship, for just a shot at the Super Bowl, I would totally take that for the Lions.
Well, I threw out a poll question on our Twitter page at Detroit Podcast, and the question was, who do you currently root more for, the Detroit Tigers or the Detroit Lions? As of now, it's 61% Detroit Tigers, and I get it that it's in the baseball season, but I kind of have looked at it like this. I would say that it's easier to root more for the Tigers because there is kind of a structure of an organization that has done some things. Al Avila has worked with Dave Dombrowski for 2 decades, and they kind of know what talent to bring in. Collectively, though, the ultimate success hasn't been there, but they're at least on a road to something. They've at least given us some memories. The Detroit Lions, you start off every year with hope. What I'm saying to you is I think you should lower your expectations and go with the philosophy of lower your expectation and hope they over-deliver. When you have hope that they're going to do something, then I think your disappointment is going to be more, where I think you should just go in going, you know what? They win 8 games this year, it'll be great. That's my attitude. I got them going 9-7, 10-6, but I fully am expecting and thinking that if they get to the postseason, they'll mess it up. And I think that if they do, then they'll over-deliver. I'll be like, whoa, they actually did something. Oh, Stafford showed up. I'll be a little bit more excited. So I think for you and your little fan heart for the Lions, I would say just go with the attitude of, maybe the way you do now with the Tigers, like, it's a 500 team.
So you want to follow a team that is spending oodles upon oodles of money.
There's talent.
That they haven't performed, though. They have, the guy who's running the team right now is basically just a lackey of Dave Dombrowski. He has, what bold strokes has he made, since he left? And then they have a lame duck manager. Call it what it is. That's what he is. He doesn't really know what he's doing out there. And
I think I read somewhere that he kind of had a little bit more than just a lackey role in the David Price move. He was kind of more influential than people are saying and giving him credit for. Listen, this is a guy, you got to give him credit. I definitely agree with you that he definitely needs to take some criticism for the way this team is built because, again, the bullpen's ineffective. You got guys out there that maybe just can't do the job. And so, yeah, he does deserve criticism.
But it's a guy who hasn't done anything since he's been here.
He's been, you can't say that.
Bringing in Jordan Zimmerman and Justin Upton?
Hey.
What have they done?
Well, Jordan Zimmerman, before he got hurt, was on pace maybe to be a Cy Young. And Justin Upton was a younger version. And by all accounts, everybody's going with this sabermetric type thing. And sabermetrically, I think it was an advantageous move to sign Justin Upton based upon his defense. I know that you can go with the eye test. And of course, in hindsight, when you see Cespedes destroying the baseball, but maybe he just didn't want to be here. And so, and part of it is, unfortunately, a lot of talk is that maybe Yoenis didn't really vibe with Brad Ausmus, or David Price maybe didn't vibe with Brad Ausmus, and they just weren't team guys. And so that might have been a reason why that, hey, it just wasn't the right fit, and they want more team guys.
Well, the reason that I want to hope more for the Lions right now is because while the Tigers are basically stuck with Mr. Ilitch and trying to do whatever they can to get some semblance of a playoff, getting into the playoffs, trying to win a championship, the Lions finally have hired a decent general manager. We're finally out from under the shadow of Matt Millen and Martin Mayhew and Tom Lawand, and we finally have a guy who has a somewhat of a winning pedigree, coming from the Patriots and Bob Quinn.
My simple argument is that the Tigers are closer to the ultimate prize than the Lions are. I would say that the Tigers...
Are the Tigers going to win the World Series this year?
Are the Tigers going to win the World Series this year? The window is ever so close to hitting the sill and being shut, but there is a chance the guys come back, maybe just make one move for a role guy, and it takes off, or something happens and it takes off. The chances are slim, less than 15%, that they make a long postseason run. But let's say the odds and the percentage is 12%. The Lions are at negative 50%. at this point in time.
What's the record right now? What's the Lions' record right now?
I would say the Lions' record is 0-0.
Yeah. So they haven't lost any games. They haven't won any games. But until we get them on the field,
Then
we won't know.
Okay, so we'll just have this conversation in, the first game of September where they lose on September 11th to Indianapolis. That's when we'll have the conversation because you'll see it. You'll see Andrew Luck dominate, and you'll see Matthew Stafford.
I don't know about that. I can speak on the Lions, man. I think Andrew Luck.
What's causing you to have all this hope, knowing that there's no history behind it? Is it because you're a fan and you just think that, okay, new leadership, new talent, but what is it that's causing you to stay on this bandwagon?
I think there is something to say about the way that they ended last season. I'm not saying that they're going to that Matt Stafford is going to completely carry over his performance from last year, but I think they finally started getting on the right page. I like having, Golden Tate, Marvin Jones. I like what they've been saying about TJ Jones. I'd like to see Amir Abdullah. I think there's a lot more hope on the team for the players to develop.
Listen,
who's going to develop on the Tigers right now?
Factually speaking, you can't have hope for the Lions because the history will tell you that they're going to disappoint you. You can't have. I mean, what you do is you have to kind of go into it being skeptical, and they will tell you that. Rod Wood came on the airwaves and said it. That you guys should have the right to be skeptical because we haven't done it yet.
Because I have hope doesn't mean I'm not skeptical of the team. I am skeptical of the running back position. I don't know if Amir Abdullah can be an every down back. I don't know if I hate Stephen Ridley, and I really want to see what Zach Zenner can do. I don't know if Eric Ebron can become a better pass catching tight end in this league, but I think there's more room to hope for those players than what we have currently. Is Anibal Sanchez going to get any better? Is Mike Pelfrey going to get any better?
Maybe. And so I would say that because baseball, I know baseball and football are different sports, but the Tigers have given us a lot of great memories even this year. The Sunday game, down 4-1, 3 straight home runs. Unbelievable. Tyler Collins, Jared Saltalamacchia, Nick C, 3 home runs. I know they blew it at the end, but hey, there was more opportunity to have more exciting memories with being a fan of the Detroit Tigers. So what I would say is I want to bring fans happiness. And by bringing fans happiness, I'd say that the Tigers, if you just root for one team, and I know we both root for both and we want them both, but if the argument is which one team, if you invested in more, would probably give you more of a return, I would say it's the Detroit Tigers. The Lions, you got to have a lot of things fall right this year. And you got to remember, a Hall of Famer just walked out the door. And you're going to hope that the guys that are there are going to replace him and be productive. But I would say you're setting yourself up for failure if you're going to root for the Lions within the next 3 years to get to the Super Bowl and win it all.
Nope, don't care. I'm going to root for the Lions.
So you're thinking seriously this year, and we'll talk more about the Lions in the second half of the podcast, but you're thinking that you're feeling like, okay, I like what Bob Quinn's doing. The organization's kind of in flux. He's bringing in guys that, there's really the true sense of competition, and Stafford's going to finally evolve into a guy that's going to be consistent. You're feeling the vibe, and you're, drinking the Honolulu Blue Kool-Aid?
As I'm saying all along, I have hope.
Okay.
I'm not 100% sure if Stafford is ever going to be that quarterback who can make players better, but I think he can be a game manager, and I think the players around him can make him look like a better quarterback.
All right,
I've been saying that before.
Help me think through these Detroit Tigers of mine. 2016 is probably going to be a wash. You're probably not going to make the postseason. It's probably going to be a devastating season. But do you think that they are poised to then maybe in the offseason make more moves to kind of start over again? Do you feel like the organization is closer to selling than they are to buying in the offseason and starting over?
They should, because Miguel Cabrera is...
It's shut.
I'm not saying the door's shut. The dude probably still has another 2 to 3 good seasons. And that's probably at best 2 to 3 really good seasons from Cabrera. But even still, it's slightly going to be declined. So he's declining, even though it's not. I'm not saying the dude is awful. Same thing with Victor Martinez. The door is shutting on him. Even Justin Verlander. Verlander's getting older. I think we've seen a lot more bad starts from him. Even though he comes out and he's a bulldog, I think we've seen more bad starts out of him than we have in his, when he was JV.
And I've had this talk with Adam quite a bit. Do you think that it's time maybe to put the checkbook away, scale it back a little bit, cut the payroll down to 140, 150, and get a bunch of grinders, math guys that are going to basically like the 2006 team That 2006 team didn't have a $200 million payroll. You had a nice mix of young cats and veterans that helped you do some damage.
I think it would be smart. I don't know how you cut your payroll right now. I think you have a ton of gigantic contracts. If you just look at Justin Verlander, Miguel Cabrera, Victor Martinez, Anibal Sanchez, Jordan Zimmerman, you got a ton of money invested in those guys. I don't know how you get rid of the money in those contracts. Do I think that would be the ideal option? Yes, I do, but I just don't see that happening. You'd really have to move players on this team without really getting a ton back. Yeah, I mean, I'm talking about moving a Miguel Cabrera or a Justin Verlander. And, if we traded these guys a couple of years ago, we probably would have been commanding like 4 or 5 players with, at least one of those players being a top prospect on a team. I'm not even sure if we can get a top prospect on a team now because of where they are in their careers.
My goodness, see, it's so tough to be a Tigers and Lions fan right now. It hurts equally. It hurts me both because we've waited and waited, and we've said, you know what, I've invested emotionally. I thought the Tigers team was going to be better than where they are, and I feel like
everybody did.
Yeah, I feel like basically if we were maybe a manager away and maybe a couple different bullpen pitchers away, then you could have maybe made a run at it. But it didn't
fully
happen.
believe if we had a Terry Francona or a Joe Madden right now, we would be talking about being atop of the Central and competing for a World Series.
All right, let's take a quick break, regroup a little bit, and come back and talk about the Detroit Lions.
Oh, yay. Motor City Sports Rant, DetroitSportsPodcast.com.
Doc here. I want to tell you about one of our great sponsors, Fanatic U, Detroit Sports official outfitter and the official outfitter of the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. If you're a fan of any of the Detroit teams, if you're a fan of Michigan State, go check out fanaticu.com. Their online store is unbelievable. Great customer service. Recently they had a sale, 30% off. Pay attention to our Twitter page at Detroit Podcast. Pay attention to their Twitter page at Fanatic U Sports for flash deals. I know that Michigan is rolling out a new line. I know that there's a lot of buzz regarding the new Michigan attire. Check out fanaticu.com, and when it rolls in, that's the place, the one-stop place, if you're a fan of Detroit sports, to pick up all gear related to Detroit sports. fanaticu.com, Detroit Sports official outfitter.
Motor City Sports Rant, DetroitSportsPodcast.com. Get hyped, people. Lions training camp starts this week. I'm so pumped. I'm just ready for football to be back. I'm ready for NFL. I'm ready for college. Just give me football. I'm ready for baseball to be done. I'm tired of talking about the Tigers because I've already predicted it. They're going to be 500, and I want to talk about something that hasn't already been ruined.
My goodness. Yeah, a lot of people are getting excited for football. That means the summer is going to be coming to an end. Fall, a lot of people get excited to tailgate, looking into supporting Michigan State. And by all accounts, this could be a very big year, a comeback year for the Maize and Blue. So a lot of people are looking into that. A lot of people are excited to see what the Detroit Lions are going to do. College football, professional football, fantasy football, it's in the air, and it's going to definitely kick off Friday this week. The Detroit Lions and the crew, they report back to training camp.
Allen Park, baby.
Before we talk about that, I know we got a lot to break down with the Lions. There's always stuff to talk about. I get excited definitely talking about football, but a lot of hip-hop being bumped on our network. What do you think about that? Jenna's show, she loves hip-hop. You love hip-hop. I'm more of a guy that kind of likes the oldies a little bit, but doesn't really play well on a podcast.
Yeah, you like to play your wrestling anthem.
Exactly. And a couple of if you listen to the Doc and Jock show every Thursday, you know that you're definitely going to hear some wrestling beats and wrestling entrance themes. But the hip hop is definitely kicking it on our network here.
Yeah, it's fun to come back to. It gets you hyped up like that. I needed to pick me up after being depressed talking about the Tigers. That's a song. It's hard not to get hyped when you listen to that.
Okay, so you have stated in the previous segment you're super excited. You're hopeful for the Detroit Lions. I'm going with the little bit more cautiously optimistic approach. I want to have low expectations. So whatever they do, they can overwhelm me and go. I definitely want to go with the philosophy of low expectations, and I hope they over-deliver.
I feel like hopeful and cautiously optimistic are pretty much the same thing.
What is one couple reasons why you're optimistic with this 2016 version of the Detroit Lions?
I think our defense has the possibility to kind of get back to where it was. We had DeAndre Levy back, and for all intents and purposes, I think he's going to be 100% healthy. So you have a budding all-star on your defensive line with Ziggy Ansah. You went out in the draft, and you got a guy that many people thought was going to be a first-round player in the second round in A'Shawn Robinson. They're already talking about him winning out a starting job as a defensive tackle, him lining up with Haloti Ngata. You got DeAndre Levy, as I said, Tahir Whitehead. I think, and then I think you really have a good young core in the defensive backs. Which, going back to the Millen era, I think for the longest time, you always could point to our secondary just being Swiss cheese. We had nobody there. We had Dre Bly for a couple years. We had nobody. Now Darius Slay, he's becoming one of the best shutdown corners in the league. I think he needs another year to really kind of solidify his place in that upper echelon. I think Nevin Lawson is another young talent. Alex Carter, Quandre Diggs, just a cornerback. You still have Glover Quinn, who I think he at least has another year or two. And it's at the strong safety, it's a little bit of a toss up right now. But I think you have that guy Miles Killebrew. He's probably the most interesting. But I think it's going to be a battle between Raphael Bush and Tavon Wilson, and then Miles Killebrew. So I think on the defense, I think there's a lot of potential. Obviously, with the offense, you got to be a little bit worried. You can't replace Calvin Johnson, but what you can do is try and fill in what he did with a couple different players. And I think that's what we tried to do last year with Ndamukong Suh. Haloti Ngata wasn't brought in to replace Suh. He was brought in to help fill the void that he was. And, we had some issues. He was injured. Tyron Walker was injured. But back on the offense, I think Golden Tate, we went out and signed Marvin Jones, Jeremy Curley, TJ Jones, they're saying is going to be, he's gotten a better rapport with Stafford. And then the offensive line, you went out in the first round, drafted Taylor Decker. You move Riley Reif over to the right side. You possibly draft another starter at center with Graham Glasgow. If you just look at the real potential, the bright spots of the team, I think that's where you find the hope. And I think that can almost overshadow some of the places where there are question marks. I mean, the big question marks, running back position. You went out, you drafted Amir Abdullah last year, and he kind of lost faith, I think, with the coaching staff with his fumbling issues. You want him to come in, and there's also the question if he's going to be healthy coming into week one. Theo Riddick has been a really solid pass catching threat, but it remains to be seen if he can be an every down running back. And I hate Stephen Ridley, but apparently everybody's saying that he may be able to fill this number 3 running back void. I'd rather see Zach Center, who I thought showed a lot of promise last year. And then, Eric Ebron, another guy who can he develop into, the Jimmy Graham, the pass catching type tight end. And then obviously the biggest question mark is Matthew Stafford, who I think he really is a very average, or at least a slightly above average quarterback. If you rank him somewhere with with all the quarterbacks in the NFL, I think he probably comes in right around 15 or 16. But can he, hold this team together? Can he operate without Calvin Johnson? Can he get the ball to where it needs to be and make it so we stay in game, our defense keeps us in games, and our offense can at least get us to where we can be competing?
I just got off the phone with Lions PR. They definitely want to interview you. They want to bring you in right away, and they want to put you on DetroitLions.com, make you a feature writer, and a guy that's going to be a DetroitLions.com feature writer and a superstar. Oh my God,
dude,
Jason!
If they want, don't even joke about that.
I'm going to put a poll.
I would get up and leave this office right now, and I would drive to Allen Park.
Oh
if
my
that was
God.
What it was. I realized I just went on a gigantic tirade.
That was awesome. I was like, oh my God, he's been reading that website up top to bottom. You're gonna be right
It's
up there
all
with
off the top of my head.
Mike O'Hara, Tim Twentyman, Jason Jarvi, right in that class. Okay, now I'm going to tell you what I think and what I think is going to actually happen. What you brought up is what coaches will say, what the front office is going to say. What I see with the Lions is, yes, improved talent. But at this point in time, you go, okay, well, you watch football, you watched all of the 2015 season, and you go, okay, who are the great teams? You got Carolina, you had Denver, you had Arizona, you had Green Bay. You had a lot of great teams out there, and you watch some of these intense games. And so what does it come down to? There's not that much of a difference between an elite team and a mediocre team. What is the main difference is making key plays at the right time in key games, okay? And so what the Lions struggle with is at those key moments when it's crunch time and somebody has to step their game up a notch. Who's that going to be? Is it going to be Golden Tate this year? We're going to talk about that a little bit later in this segment. Do we think he's going to be an adequate replacement? Is it going to be Matthew Stafford? Is it going to be a guy like Darius Slay? Is it going to be a guy like DeAndre Levy? Who's going to, we all know roughly speaking what they can produce. That's why they're on the squad. Who, at the key moment, when it's key, 3rd down and 6, do you get off the field? More often than not, they don't, because, and it's a question mark that a lot of writers look at and a lot of fans also look at is, does this team have enough supreme talent at the top end of any position? Quarterback, maybe you could say in the top 10. Everyone else, you could say Darius Slay, Levy are in that second tier of talent, but top tier talent wins top tier games. And so what we're looking at as a starting point is with the Lions, around an 8-8 team with, if you get hot at the right times, you play a couple key games at the right spots, you go to 10-6. So can they do that this year? I think they can, because the teams that they're playing aren't that great. So you can have a successful year. But now, let's say, okay, you go 10-6, you make it to the first round. Now it's 4th down and 2 late in the game where you're down by maybe 2 or 3, or you're up by 2 or 3. History tells us that the Lions will not go for it, will punt the ball away, then they'll get a terrible penalty, and it'll result in the opponent's drive being extended and us losing the game. Jason, it hurt when we lost that game to Green Bay by the Hail Mary. It hurt, but for me, not that much. I mean, literally, it's just I just tweeted out, oh, there's another way we lost. It hurt. It was devastating, but it's just another way that they've added to lose. We all laugh because we go, well, that's the Lions. And then you got to go, okay, what else allows you to become a team that can be contending for the championship? Great coaching. Now, the coordinators I like the stability. You see
Jim
evolvement.
Bob Cooter, Terrell Austin.
You see evolvement there. But at the top level, can Jim Caldwell lead this team to the promised land late in the game? Does he make the right move? I mean, all you got to look to what we've seen. That key 4th down in the Dallas game, he didn't have the balls to go for it. He's ultra conservative at the worst times. And then in the key moments, when it's crunch time, he kind of gets a little bit scatterbrained. The game's too fast, and there are key errors. So I'm hopeful. I think we're going to see great memories. I think we're going to see a great season. Ups and downs, a lot to yell about. But if you just pinpoint what's it going to take for this Lions team to get to the promised land of hope, you got to get supreme talent. Who's that going to be? Who's going to step up? I just don't see it on this team. I see
I
mediocre team.
really think you're pinpointing the offense right now.
Mm-hmm.
Because I really do think that we have supreme talent on the defense. If you want to, they even came out with an article on ESPN of who has the best defensive triplets. And I think the Lions were in the top 10. Because if you take Ezekiel Ansah, you take DeAndre Levy, and you take Darius Slay, and those are 3 of the best. It's one of the best combos that anybody has in the NFL. Now, and I get where you're coming from. If you want to strictly talk about the offense, I completely agree. But I think that's what we're gonna have to see this year. The book is a little bit written on Matt Stafford. I think we kind of know what we're gonna get from him. Now, he has the ability to throw for 4,500 yards and 30 touchdowns. It's gonna be the other players around him, and if they can step up. He's done all that when he's had Calvin Johnson. I think Golden Tate he did step up the year that Calvin missed a couple games. That's why I think outside of Matt Stafford, being the person who needs to step up the most this year. I think it's really going to come down to Eric Ebron. We spent such a high draft pick on him. Can he come in this year and really make a difference? Because if he can come in this year, even give us like 800 yards, 50 to 60 catches, I think that completely stretches the field. If you have Eric Ebron going down the middle of the field, that opens up room for the Golden Tates, the Marvin Jones, Theo Riddick out of the backfield. So it's really going to come down to what he can do and what he can do for this team.
All right, I was browsing through the Free Press and News like I do, and I came across this article from an individual who's writes periodically for the Free Press, Steve Yingling, and he writes that
good beer.
He writes that NFL greats Jerry Rice, Tim Brown are very confident that Golden Tate should have no problem kind of easing into that number one wide receiver spot, and he has the ability to make plays because of what he did in Seattle, based upon what he's done in Detroit, being a secondary receiver. Golden Tate is going to be a key factor in this offense. You've brought in a guy that's going to be a deep threat that can maybe help out Golden Tate and help him out to get open more, to be able to do his thing. But do you think that he's going to have the ability to step up, be the true number one for this team, and be able to take on the opponent's best cover cornerback?
I think Tate is going to give it he's going to give you 100%, no matter what. Because, in the time that he's been here in Detroit, that's all I've seen him do. I've seen him give it all out in the field. I've seen him take, there's, Lions games, back when Reggie Bush was really on the team, when Reggie Bush would get hit, and, there would be a joke, he's down, he's hurt. And there's hits where I've seen Golden Tate take, and it's just, the dude's going to get hurt, but the dude just pops right back up. I think you're not going to get the crazy, ridiculous numbers that you see from Antonio Brown or Julio Jones. I think those guys they're deep threats, and I think you run deeper routes with those guys. But I think Golden Tate has that ability to really kind of be the leader on this wide receiver core.
Now, Jason, I need you to kind of peek back at some of the old Doc and Jocks, because Adam and I spoke on this, and I looked at it specifically. We actually, on our podcast, had a debate when Calvin was here, whether Golden Tate should have been the number one. Because you remember, I think it was last year or the year before.
It was 2 years ago.
Yeah, 2 years ago, Calvin was out for a little bit of time dealing with his, myriad of injuries, and Golden Tate went off for some great numbers. Calvin comes back, Golden Tate's numbers dwindle. And I said, you know what? It's not a ridiculous argument to have that maybe Golden Tate should be the feature guy. And I really believe he got pissed, and he got upset that, hey, Matthew and Kelvin got this thing going on, and it's gotten us a little bit of production, but it hasn't taken us too far. I think that once Golden Tate was able to be featured, he put up some numbers. He put up catches, and he averaged, I believe, 100 yards and a touchdown every single game. And I know because I faced him in fantasy a couple times, and his numbers went up dramatically when Calvin was gone. And so we asked the question, we were laughed at, and we had a lot of debates with people going, no, you have to have Calvin. I think that what I like is he's embracing that role. He wants to try and do that. I think, though, what you have to make sure happens is that Marvin Jones has to be given some deep threats and given some touches deep to kind of open up that defense, because I kind of feel like to start, they're going to dink and dunk and 5-yard passes and try to kind of keep Matthew Stafford in check. I don't know how many times they're going to be willing to throw deep. I'm hoping it's a little bit more, because Marvin can do some things.
Well, not only just throwing deep to Marvin Jones, I think it's going to be important to
execute,
to really show that other people on the team can catch a ball. It's going to be important for Marvin Jones just to be able to catch a slant pass. It's going to be important for TJ Jones to go out there, or Jeremy Curley to go out there and not drop balls, so that we can keep defenses honest. We can have Golden Tate, in some one-on-one coverage, because that's when he makes guys look silly. He catches a screen pass and he runs at 80 yards. I think that's when Golden Tate that's where he is his best. So if it's going to be important getting Marvin Jones involved in the offense and making defenses be accountable for him. And that's also where Eric Ebron comes in, is making defenses be accountable for these players. So we're not just double covered on our big guys.
And I like the organizational philosophy of competition. They're bringing in guys left and right. They're starting to put together their, in case of emergency charts, things like that. I hear Jimmy Clausen's coming in this week to test. I don't see him making a big dent on anything. But, you got to have a list of guys that, in case of an emergency, stuff happens, you go to that list and boom, you got the guys that you can call upon. So I like the fact that, there's a lot of competition on the offensive line. There's a lot of competition on the defensive line. And that's just going to promote the team getting better and helping, letting the mindset be, hey, your spot is not guaranteed. But, I'm a simpleton. I really believe this offense, what they haven't done consistently, what I haven't seen since
Run the ball.
Run the damn football. I haven't seen it since my 30s. I saw it with Barry Sanders. I know they've tried a myriad of ways, but I just haven't seen it where, you consistently run the football 4 to 5 yards, break a deep, break something off. Javid Best started to inch closely to that, but, concussions ruined it for him. But you're starting to maybe put that together, and you're going to see if Amir Abdullah is that guy. He has to hold on to the football, but you can't have 3rd and 8 the whole time you're playing offensive football.
You gotta be able to come out in either the first or second down and
4
run
yards
the
minimum.
ball,
Yeah,
get a couple yards, and not just 1-2 yards. I'm talking get 4 to 5 yards. And I know not every single play you're gonna get 4 or 5 yards. Not every play you're not gonna break a 20-yarder. But you need to be more consistent.
With a better offensive line, you've drafted Decker. Maybe Tomlinson comes through. You have improvement. You have, guys coming in with experience like a Jeff Schwartz that can help this offensive line gel, because that's in the trenches is going to help you win. When it's late in games, you have a lead, you pound the rock. And I do believe that the Lions are going to try to really implement a hybrid version of the West Coast offense where, hey, 3 to 4 yards, definitely take it down the field and take your chances when you can, but you got to be able to. And too many times last year, they tried to run the football. I mean, basically, Amir Abdullah, that first drive versus San Diego was sweet. We were like, oh, my goodness, please don't let this be a flash in the pan. He busted one, boom. And then I don't think we saw much besides disappointment and fumbles for the rest of the way. He had a decent C+ to B- rookie year, but for the place that he was taken, you needed more.
Yeah, you needed more, and I think you're going to get more this season. So I mean, Amir Abdullah at number 1. Theo Riddick he's really your pass catching threat out of the backfield. How do you feel about the third running back? Because they have a bunch of different options right now, or at least probably the main two would be the free agent signee and Stephen Ridley, and the fan favorite of last year, Zach Zenner.
Mm-hmm.
I've came out on the fantasy show. And I'm not going to be light about it. I don't like Stephen Ridley. I think he's a failure of a player right now. He had a season where he was good with the Patriots, and then he had fumbling problems. He couldn't make it with the Jets last year. And if you can't make it with the Jets, why should anyone really believe that he can make it with the Lions?
So help me out again. We know Amir Abdullah, number 1.
Right.
Number 2, we're assuming he's going to be who?
Theo Riddick.
You think they're going to give him more of an expanded role?
I think they might try. I think with another year of Jim Bob Cooter, I think they really like what Theo Riddick brings to the team. And I don't think they're going to be opposed to trying to run him more.
See, I feel like those two guys, if they step up their game 15 to 20%, that's all you really need. Everything else is a moot point. Which of those guys like Stephen Ridley and the myriad of guys like George Wynn and whoever else that's going to be competing for that spot, those are guys that are just going to be on the field for, relatively speaking, not a lot of downs. I would say if you can get Amir Abdullah to not fumble the ball, you give him some holes, and you expand the role of Theo Riddick, he does the job. He expanded his game. He's gotten better, but they're not using him enough. They've relegated him to being the pass catching wide. They've relegated him to be the pass-catching running back, but he can do some things. He emerged. He's a young guy that doesn't have a lot of, tread on the tires. So I would say go balls to the wall with those two, and whatever else you get from Zach Zenner, I would say that he's the odds-on favorite to produce the most because he's a thumper and he's a gamer, but can he stay on the field? That's a question now we have to have. Stephen Ridley, I don't see them really, you kind of go by what you think their expectations are. I don't think the Lions really have big time expectations for Ridley to do much more than just, hey, on key third downs, don't mess up, stay true to pass blocking, help out Matthew Stafford, and when the plays that you're in there, do the job. But I think if everything stays to form, if Zach Zenner stays healthy, he probably will emerge and be the guy that you're going to count on.
Now, the one thing I would love for Abdullah and Riddick to be the solution being the 1-2 punch, But the thing you run into is that they're both smaller running backs. Neither of them are really the guys who are going to run north and south for you. I think they want to hope that Amir Abdullah could do that, but he's still a small guy. He's going to deal with injuries. So that's where I think you kind of have to have that third running back who you can bring in on third downs or goal line situations. The joke was always Mike Tolbert on the Chargers was always going to get a touchdown. He was going to vulture touchdowns for your fantasy team. And I think that's probably why they went out and signed Stephen Ridley to really kind of possibly be that back. I don't want him to be that back. I'd much rather see what Zach Zenner can do. And I think he really is the bull rusher of a running back on this team.
So, do you think the running backs will produce, and do you think the offensive line will help this team out and improve upon their rankings? Because right now they're not ranked all that great in terms of at least some of the initial.
I think the
offensive line rankings.
The offensive line will be better. I think we're still going to struggle running the ball, especially with no Calvin this year. It really is gonna be a transition. If it will truly be a surprise if they come out and they have like a top 10 rushing attack, which I in no way expect them to have, because there's a lot of things where you can point to with Lions history. They're gonna lose this game because they're down by a touchdown and they're just gonna fail at some point. There's really no stats to back up that point. But I think with the running backs we've had, we've never really had a running attack since Barry Sanders left, and I don't think the guys are there. They're not gonna get us really to the top 10 in the rushing attack, unless I think we'd really have to fundamentally change our offense to really be a more focused on running team. Because we still as long as Stafford is the quarterback, I think we're going to be a pass-first team.
Now, I know this name is getting floated about. There's a little bit of underground hype for this kid because of what he's done in shorts. But have you heard the hype regarding Cole Wick, tight end, 6'6", big dude? He's come out and kind of taken this team a little bit by storm. He was an undrafted free agent. He played at a nowhere college, and he did a lot of great things so far leading up to training camp. This is a dude that's going to be given a chance because Pettigrew, Ebron have kind of been bad.
Pettigrew's starting on the pup list right now.
Exactly. So this guy, Cole Wick, has kind of had a little bit of underground buzz because of what he's done. He's a massive dude, and everybody knows that tight ends kind of have been more of a focal point for offenses in the NFL. When you look at teams like New England, you look at what Carolina did, Denver. Teams that are successful implement and utilize a tight end efficiently. And we got guys that we're still hoping with Eric Ebron that he holds onto the ball a little bit more. We've had Pettigrew, but he's been inconsistent with penalties.
Pettigrew is more. He's really more for the offensive line.
Exactly.
He's the blocking tight end.
But have you heard the hype for Cole Wick?
I haven't read too much into him, but if the guy can come in, if he's better than Ebron, start him day one. I'm not sure if he is better than Ebron right now.
You want to know the name of his university that he played for? The University of Incarnate Word from San Antonio, Texas. Nobody's ever heard of that. When he tells people that, his teammates are like, what? And he's got to kind of reiterate, I played ball, but the University of Incarnate Word hasn't really dropped too many
Hey, they make
professional
good football players in Texas. I'll take it.
I really believe that for the offense to click, the tight ends have to emerge and the running game has to emerge, definitely. Then you go to the defensive side, DeAndre Levy's back. You got, arguably one of the top 5 rushing defensive ends in the entire NFL. If he's going to continue to emerge, a lot of question marks really along the line of the defense. Some people, that we've talked to and kind of when you look at it are really saying that the defense has a lot of question marks.
I don't see that. I really don't think we have that many question marks.
Not too many names, though. Not too many superstars. You have a good talent.
I don't think you need to. And
Ziggy Ansah, okay, great.
We rotate out so much that I think our entire line just has to be solid. We have Haloti Ngata and Tyron Walker, Ashawn Robinson. The line switches out so often. They kind of all have to be just ready to go. Ziggy Ansah is going to play the majority of plays. I think Devin Taylor, they wouldn't have let go of the talent that we've had if they didn't really believe in Devin Taylor. I think going behind them, I think DeAndre Levy is amazing. He's probably one of the top outside linebackers in the league. Tahir Whitehead is dependable, and then I think you have with Josh Bynes or Kyle Vanoy, that third linebacker they're not gonna play a ton because unless we're playing a 4-3. they're likely going to be playing nickel or dime where there's only one or two linebackers out there. And I don't really see where the big holes are in the defense or where the big question marks are.
Okay, so I'm at ourlads.com, and it gives you the defensive depth chart. And at left defensive end, you got Devin Taylor. Left defensive tackle, Tyron Walker. Right defensive tackle, Haloti Nada. Right defensive end, Ziggy Ansah. Outside linebacker, Tahir Whitehead. John Bostic. Middle linebacker, DeAndre Levy. Outside linebacker, Darius Slay. Left cornerback, Tavon Wilson. Strong safety, Glover Quinn. Free safety, Nevin Lawson. Right cornerback. And the nickelback, Quandre Diggs. Now, you look at that. You go, okay, Tahir Whitehead, Ziggy Ansah, Nada's the veteran. You don't have a lot of superstar impact guys, top 5 in the league. So what you got is you have a system in place. And we've talked about that in terms of why there's such respect for the Lions defense in Terrell Austin, in that he's kind of putting in a system that's going to be really go balls to the wall, get after the quarterback, and get turnovers. They've done that, but now with the turnover from 2015 to 2016, are these new guys they're going to implement? Are they going to be the guys?
I think the way the NFL works is it really does have to. It goes, if you have a really good defensive system, you can rotate in players. You don't see defenses really keep a ton of all-star or elite players. You look at, that's why Von Miller held out as long as he did. You saw what the Carolina Panthers did this offseason. They initially franchised Josh Norman, their all-star cornerback, and then they rescinded the offer because the guy wanted too much money, and they really believed that it's all about what their system is. So they let him walk, and they have 3 or 4 guys on that team who are true all-stars. I think you can look at our team. I think we can have 4 all-stars on our team. I think you look at Glover Quinn, Darius Slay, DeAndre Levy, and Ziggy Ansah. Those are all guys who could be Pro Bowl players.
Okay, so you're thinking that the defense, the question marks aren't as severe as I'm stating them.
I don't think they are.
Top 10 defense? Top 10 offense?
I think they have the ability to be a top 10 defense. I think the offense will probably be in the middle of the pack.
Okay, so before we wrap it up, Jerry Mallory does a podcast, Hindsight 20, comes out every single Monday. He talked a little bit about the player that we can least afford to lose on offense and defense. Before we get out of here, who's the player right now that we can least afford to lose on the offense in your mind?
It has to be Matt Stafford.
Okay.
If you lose Matt Stafford, that means you're going to be trotting out Dan Orlovsky or Jake Rudock, which it's really the absolute person that you cannot lose. If Golden Tate were to go down, I think you'd be able to do patchwork or go out and sign somebody to kind of replace that. If Amir Abdullah goes down or Theo Riddick, I think we have depth there. I think Matt Stafford really is the ultimate because we don't have anybody behind him who could take that next step or who could really lead this
but
team.
If it were to happen, not to say that it were, but if it happens around game 2 and he goes to the sideline and maybe gets crunched and Jake Rudock has to come in, maybe the Cosmos might change your expectations there.
Oh, you're so crazy.
Okay.
Jake Rudock is not going to come in this year and lead this team. There's a big difference between Jake Rudock and Tom Brady.
Okay, well, let's
shut your mouth. You're a Sparty.
Now, on the defensive end, would you say it's Ziggy Ansah or would you say it would be maybe Darius Slay?
I might put it at. I think there's a couple people. I think
one guy that you cannot afford to lose would cause the most devastating effect if he's gone.
As much as I like Ziggy Ansah, it might be Ziggy Ansah. I think you could argue again for DeAndre Levy. I think not having him last year was a big reason why our defense suffered. Everyone was kind of shuffling to figure out how they were just going to live without him. I think if you lose Darius Slay or Glover Quinn, your secondary definitely hurts. But I think Ziggy Ansah really has become probably the most important part on the defense because the defensive line really sets the pace for the entire defense. If your defensive line can put pressure on the opposing quarterback and get him to hurry throws or get sacks or get knockdowns, it really helps out everybody else. It helps out your linebackers. It helps out your secondary. So Ziggy Ansah, I think, is probably the biggest person that you would lose, that you can't lose on your defense.
That was fun. That was actually fun. I miss talking football that in-depthly, so I can't wait to break it all down. Let's just say, to start it off. Let's just get through the first couple weeks of training camp injury-free.
Yes.
Let's no ACLs because it just starts. You know it from last year. Please. And the good thing is the rash of suspensions hasn't hit the Detroit Lions. Le'Veon Bell, Josh Gordon, who's been suspended for several years now and is having problems. Luckily, that's been kind of eradicated with the new regime. Let's just hope that within the first couple days, no ACLs, no MCLs, no big problems, because if that injury bug hits, it's going to be a problem. So let's just get through the first couple days, stay relatively healthy, and let's kick off these preseason games and let's get this thing rolling, baby.
Fingers crossed, man.
Jason has hope for you, Lions. DetroitLions.com.
Yeah.
Give him a dial. DetroitLions.com. That's Jason Jarvi. He loves the Lions. He has hope. He writes things from a slanted perspective in the Lions' favor.
And don't even joke about that. It makes me sad. I would love to do that.
All right.
But that's going to do it for this episode of the Motor City Sports Rant. I am Jason Jarvi. He is John the Doc Macaroon. And until next week, we'll see you later.
Jarvi, you don't like the Tigers. You like the Lions, but they stink.
Okay, nice idiot. You. Bye-bye.
Good day, sir. I said good day.
All right. Take care now. Bye-bye then.
Loser.